I'm with Andrew Heaton again. Everybody, welcome back to Walk-Ins. Welcome. So good to see you live from
Pleasure to be here.
Scotland.
Hello, yeah, live from Scotland. Nice to see you, Bridget.
You too. You always go there for in the summer, correct?
I do. I used to live over here. I lived over here right after I graduated college, and then I got a master's degree over here. And then all my friends were like, "Well, I guess you're part of us now. We can't get rid of you. That's fine." So I come over every year to reinvigorate my weird community. I need to get like a mistress or something. That way I can completely compartmentalize my life. But I usually come over
Like your
for
second
six
family.
6 weeks. Yeah, exactly. Like a secret second family. Have some kid named Hamish and Olga or something like that. And yeah, so I come over here for like 6 weeks to 2 months, if I'm able.
And do you do Fringe when you're there? Because it's around that time, right?
It is, yeah. So what I've done the last few years is I don't do my own show, but I'll just kind of flirt with other shows. So I'll
Uh-huh.
drift around and I'll do guest spots on other programs. This year I just kind of took it easy. I was a civilian. I went to a bunch of shows, which was nice, but I was a little. The Fringe is a lot. It's a wonderful festival for anybody unfamiliar with it. The Fringe Festival in Edinburgh is the largest comedy festival in the world. Edinburgh goes from 300,000 people to a million people in the span of a week. So Edinburgh goes from like the fifth largest city to the second largest city in about 24 hours. It's great. You can totally do wall to wall comedy from like 7 a.m. to 3 a.m. But I've done that the last 5 years. So now I'm just kind of like taking it easy, going to one or two, laughing, stealing jokes, and then retreating to work on other stuff. But I'll come.
Yeah.
I'll be funny next year. I've been off duty as a funny man this year.
What are you working on now?
So the two main things I do is I host a show called The Political Orphanage, and I've been
Mm-hmm.
doing that full time for 5 6 years. That's a podcast designed for people that are tired of the red team versus blue team thing. I try to figure out how things work and make them work better. So, like on my way to Scotland, I circuitously went through Finland and Sweden and Norway to ask them, "Why are you so goddamn happy? What like
Are
why are
they?
you people?" They think they are, but like there's a secret I'm going to give you. I looked into this. Like the Finns always top the charts in terms of global happiness, but the question that they ask is just, can you imagine being much happier? And the Finns can't.
Mm.
And I looked at that and was like, well, my fantasies are absolutely lurid. Like if you were to ask me, could you be happier than you are now? Like I have daydreams involving moon bases and fembots. I'm pretty happy, but I could be a lot happier. So I think it's possible the Finns just aren't very imaginative.
Isn't
But
this the culture that, like, I think Bill Burr had a bit about it where they just believe nothing happens when you die? Like, he was talking about, I believe it's Scandinavian where they're like, "There nothing. It's more terrifying than anything," but maybe
yeah,
that has something to do with it. Like,
eh,
they lack imagination because they don't have an
yeah.
afterlife or they don't have multiple lives or reincarnation. It's just nothing.
It could well be. The impression I got was that at least in Finland, they're all nominally Catholic, or excuse me, nominally Lutheran. Like they go to Lutheran
Mhm.
like once a year to get it out of their system, and then they don't think about it the other 364 days. But that's the main thing I do is the political orphanage. And then for coming up on a year now, I moved to Washington D.C. and I do funny videos for Reason TV. So I am
Mhm.
a political satirist in video form over at Reason. Those are the two main things I do. Then on Wednesdays, I do a show called We're Not Wrong, where I play like armchair pundit. So I'm very busy with podcasting and funny videos.
Yeah, I understand. What do you think about DC now that the troops have been deployed?
I managed to avoid that. I got out before the
Oh, you were
national
gone.
yeah, the National Guard was called in, so we'll see if they let me back in. I go back and forth on DC, Bridget. I've lived there. This is my third time to live in DC. It is a
Mhm.
really smart city. I think probably pound for pound, it's the smartest city in America. But
Really?
it's really highly educated, intelligent, but it's one very
Smarter than New
specific
York?
kind of smart.
Yeah.
It's one very specific. It's like it's an entire city populated by former student council presidents. So they're all very clever,
Mhm.
but they're all coming out of that one specific vertical. And I've kind of arrived at the conclusion no city in America should be more than 10% student council president. That should be the maximum. Like you should come into the city and they go, "Did you hold office in high school?" And there's a quota, and if they exceed that, you just can't enter the city.
But those people are just good at climate. It's very much a climber city. That was the feeling I got. And not that all cities aren't in one degree or another, but it seems like in that city everyone's climbing the same ladder. So it's very concentrated climbing. It's not
Yes,
like
it
climbing the literary ladder, climbing the media, climbing acting, or the music ladder where there's just more diversity of ladders to climb in the bigger cities. DC, it's
yeah,
just one
it's
ladder.
it's a company town, which I think is to its great detriment. Because like New York, all sorts of ladders. Like when I lived in New
Yep,
York, I was doing comedy, but like if you really wanted to get into Hasidic kite flying, you can go do that. There's all
totally.
sorts of you want to get into finance. I don't have the math skills for that, but if you want to, you can do that. Yeah, DC, it's all in government, and yeah, there is a ladder climbing element. It seems to me to be better than when I was there in my 20s. When I was there in my 20s, every party I went to, the very first question people ask you is, "Who do you work for?" And
Mm,
it kind of rubbed like a lot of those people were probably just making conversation, to be fair, but there were a fair amount of people that you could see were just assessing you for like how important are you, how much can you help me, and I hate that shit. So my new thing is I will ask people like first question at a party, what do you think about ghosts? And it's my attempt to just derail all of that immediately. Like I if you really enjoy your job, I would love to talk to you about your job because I like talking to people about things they're excited by. But if you're just doing a job, I don't really want to talk to you about your job either. I would like to hear what you think about ghosts. I find that those conversations are just summarily better than, I work at a shadowy NGO. I can't really talk about it, but I know the right people.
yeah. Do you love, working for Reason?
Yeah,
Seems
reason's
right up
great.
your yeah,
Reason
right up your
reasons
alley.
super fun. The people are great. They're really fun. I am an independent, but I broadly align with Reason. I share a lot of those political orientations, and also they're like stupidly casual in a way that I do not think I could get away with now if I ever went back to work for corporate America. Like,
Right.
they'll have cocktail parties at the office. I don't say a lot of sexist shit, but I think I could make a joke and probably be okay. Like, I don't think HR would come in on me. There's a lot of latitude that I have, and
Yeah.
they've always been super relaxed. Where prior to COVID, prior to people working remote in mass, it was already the kind of place where your boss would call you and go, I hate to be a dick, but can you come into the office on Thursday sometime between noon and 3? And then you'd go, yeah, I'll okay. So like that's the default position for Reason. It's a really nice place. I like working with them.
It's interesting to me because they don't seem stressed. Like, the Reason doesn't have this kind of desperate feeling I get from so many other media outlets.
Yeah.
There's a and I say this with all love, like, there's a little bit of a trust fund baby vibe where they just don't seem concerned with having to necessarily prove to their investors that they're making money, or I don't know how they get away with that. I don't know how they do it. If it's just an act or if they truly just have people who love them and believe in their mission, and they have people, like a you don't need a huge audience. You really just need kind of a rabid audience to manage to stay alive in this crazy ecosystem.
And I don't even have that. I'm like the bacteria along a geyser flap at the bottom of the ocean. I'm this weird creature that's able to persist, and I shouldn't, but I have like an okay sized tepid audience that likes me okay, and I'm able to do it. Yeah, I think that's probably part of it. I don't know what the pie chart is with Reason of donor versus subscription versus advertising,
Right.
but there's
Right,
certainly a,
right.
a big a big donor component. The other bit we should point out is like psilocybin. Like they're I think if you have people that are just like, I don't know, mushrooms seem pretty good, they're gonna learn to relax over time. And Reason has a lot of that. On
Yeah,
on
it's
on
exa
on your end, Bridget, what surprised you about Texas? Because you've now been out there 2-3 years from California.
uh-huh, 2 years. Yep, going on 2.5. What surprised me about Texas? I Texas has its own very strong identity, which I always knew about Texas. It's not like I'd never been here, but it's very, um Yeah, it's like Texas strong is a thing without needing to be a reason to be Texas strong, It's just like
Yeah,
it feels like the overall vibe of Texas is like Texas strong. I think,
yeah.
um, I'm surprised at how there's I'm surprised at how kind of moderate it is too. I think I expected it to be a little bit more red,
Hmm.
but it's actually quite purple. I mean, Austin's very purple, maybe more
Hmm.
obviously more blue, but I think purple surrounding and then red as you get further away from the cities. But and that's just Texas in general.
Yeah.
I think too just I think the most surprising thing to me, coming from Minnesota where I went to high school in a suburb and it was white and that was it. The suburbs in Texas are a lot more diverse than they are. I did not expect that at all. I'm pleasantly surprised by it, but where I am, a lot of the people who got kind of kicked out of Austin during the gentrification and everybody getting kind of bought out of their old houses and whatnot, they're now living in suburbs outside of Austin, so there's kind of a vibrant life that feels a little bit more like a city out in the suburbs than sometimes when I go into the city of Austin, which feels very, gentrified now from when I used to come here
Yeah.
20
Yeah.
years ago. And then also the, like, tech bro influence is a lot more dominant than it was because I first started coming here when it was, like, 2001. So, the tech bro influence in Austin is undeniable. It's weird. It
Yeah.
is
It
still
like
weird. It's still, like, a very weird city that prides itself on being weird, and I still like you said, I the thing about cities or any really anywhere, and I'm sure this is true in DC, you stumble into we were looking for studio space, and then we ended up looking at all of these art studios, and there's so many art I'm like, "Wow, people still make fine art," like, they're still painting in this economy? How are we doing this? But
yeah.
it was a huge studio with they had an open house and it was all these photographers and artists and I was like, "Oh, there's a whole art scene here." Now I couldn't
Yeah,
get a
it's I
studio here because 'cause they'd probably boycott me, but lovely to know that it
it's
exists.
I love Austin. Austin's a great city. Like I moved there from New York and it suited me perfectly. Me being from Oklahoma, I like middle America very much. I like the
Me too.
pace. I like the friendliness and the neighborliness. That's my default setting. I like the artsy part of Brooklyn. So you kind of like Austin to me sort of Brooklyn plus cowboy hats and I like
Yeah,
that. And it's also like in terms of diversity, one of the things that struck me moving there from New York was it is a lot more politically diverse than
totally.
most of the circles I traveled in New York. So like San Francisco back in 2020 voted like 99% Democrat. Like I looked at like at least 97% Democrat, whereas Austin voted like 75% Democrat. So it was an overwhelming majority, but one out of four people in that city voted for Republicans or libertarians or independents, probably Republicans. And I find that the result is that people are just a little bit nicer about politics because they don't know who's in the room. And I
Totally.
want that. I don't like it when people, I think this is actually what are your observations, when people just stand up and talk about politics as if they're giving a speech to a room full of people that already agree with them. I find it obnoxious and I
Yep.
find that when people do that, they inevitably don't like me. Whereas in Austin, I find that they're very progressive, they're very Democrat, but they're not thinking about it on a daily basis up until the election, which is the society that I want to live in. I don't want to think about politics on a daily basis. So I really liked Austin. I thought it was great in that capacity.
Yeah, and the best thing as someone who was doing comedy in LA and is now doing it here is the audiences are so I have no idea where they stand ever. Like, I truly have
Mhm.
no idea. Even at Mothership, you'll be like, "Oh, wow, like, RFK got a huge pop," which I guess isn't that surprising, but someone will make a joke about RFK Jr. and then it's like the audience goes crazy of like
Yeah.
after mentioning everybody else, and you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I guess that this is a more like RFK Jr. kind of audience, but then other nights it won't be at all. It's and in all of the other like Creek in the Cave, there's like some that are more liberal, but even when I do like the gay show that I regularly do with Ariel Isaac Norman, that audience is not just down the line blue. It's really, yeah, that is also very refreshing. And it was
And
refreshing
way
even in my suburb walking around during the election, seeing like a Kamala sign right next to, my husband was like, "That's where the gays live."
that makes for
And it
better
was,
comedy too.
but but it was very much like it is very much there. That's what I like seeing, like a Trump sign and a Kamala sign in the
Yeah.
same neighbor. That's how I grew up, and it's refreshing to me. It is
Me
very middle America.
Absolutely. Like one of my favorite places in Austin is Don's Depot. Don's Depot is a train station that changed its mind. And when we're not going to do
Uh-huh.
trains anymore, now we're a bar. And it's this wonderful
That's
conflux
every
of
bar in Austin, by the
yeah,
way.
that's
It's
true.
like,
Yeah,
we
you're
were a
right.
tattoo parlor, now we're a
Yeah.
bar.
We were a boiler factory. Now we're a craft brewery. That is
We
true.
were a morgue, now we're
Yeah.
making marijuana
Oh my God, that would
cookies.
do great. If you ever see a morgue that goes under, let me know and we could go halvesies on this and open up a bar. I'll move back. We'll have really funny cocktail names. But like Don's Depot, like you'll go into Don's Depot on any given night and they do live music. It tends to be like old country music. I don't like pop country music. I like country music as sung by an old drunk singing about regret. Like
Totally.
ideally I want the guy singing to have been in prison, and Don's Depot is more on that side of the country music equation. So you'll have the folks that have been coming in for 40 years. They're all blue haired. They're sitting up front. You'll also have like two guys that look like they just shot JR. Like they just came down from Dallas. They work on an oil rig. They've got cowboy hats. They've got starched
Yeah.
shirts. Then you'll have there's a guy that hangs out there that just always dresses like he's a disco ball. He's always in sequins. And they'll just be hanging out. Everybody's having a good time. There's
Yep.
this weird designated spot where a British person always sits, even though it's always a different British person, which makes me think maybe we live in a simulation and it's not a very good one. But it's great. Like everybody's getting along. That's how it should be.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I like my country music like that too. Like, I want Townes Van Zandt wrote "Waiting Around to Die" on his wedding night levels of depression.
Yeah, absolutely.
Give me that level of black pilling, and that's the kind of old country I want. Just on the verge of dying of
Yeah,
alcoholism or having your body burned in Joshua Tree.
100%. I made myself a playlist called Old Drunks and Sawdust. And that's the vibe I'm
Oh,
going for. I want like weathered dudes who look like Don Quixote singing about when they screwed up. Cuz like
yeah.
I don't relate to the poppy stuff of like I've got a tractor, my wife's a hot blonde. Like I can't relate to that. But a guy singing about when he screwed up, I'm like that I can relate to. Keep singing, keep crooning, old guy.
And never really got any like, learned any lessons from it
Yeah.
either.
Yeah, just kept plowing through. He's on his fifth wife. Yeah. Yeah. I want to hear from that guy.
You might have seen him on Walk-Ins Welcome, but have you checked out Brad Palumbo's podcast, Brad versus Everyone? It's a 25-minute daily show where Gen Z journalist Brad Palumbo takes on the craziest ideas on the internet, in media, and in politics. Brad covers stories you won't hear about in mainstream media, from social media trends landing some young people in jail, to the progressive media darling whose public meltdown got her fired, to the TikTok boycott against Target that makes no sense. He also pushes back on far-left extremism in the LGBT community from the perspective of a moderate gay man. But Brad also isn't afraid to disagree with the GOP or push back on far-right commentators who take things too far. Listen to Brad versus Everyone on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Tell me about your book, Tribalism Is Dumb, which I can relate to, although I feel like I've had some evolving thinking about tribalism. But
Great.
I want to hear about why you wrote your book, how long it took, because you did. I don't know if you're recording or not when you mentioned that
Yeah, 7
writing
years.
your book of Los Angeles ship, like shitting on Los Angeles
Yeah.
poems or making fun of Los Angeles, did way better than a reported book about tribalism.
Mind blowing, right? That shitting on Los Angeles at an easily digestible tome would do better than a thick anthropological treatise with jokes. Yeah. So
Yeah, I
when
can't believe.
after so I moved out to LA in January of 2020 for the
Yeah, I
networking.
remember.
I'm going to repeat that for your listeners. I moved to LA in January of 2020 for the networking and moved into basically a converted dumbwaiter under the theory that, like, well, I wasn't going to be here. I was going to be meeting directors and models and stuff and hanging out at diners and getting into hijinks. And that did not turn out to be the case. I also really don't like Los Angeles. I just think it's a horribly ugly city. So I expurgated that by leaving, moving back to Oklahoma, and I wrote a book called Los Angeles is Hideous, Poems of an Ugly City, that took like 2 weeks and 30 milligrams of Adderall, and I could just bang that out. It turns out I'm a really good poet when I'm angry. And so I was able to do that. And it was easy to sell, I think, because you know, Los Angeles is Hideous, Poems of an Ugly City. You know exactly what you're getting. And so it did well. The book that we're talking about, which actually is much more near and dear to my heart, took far more effort, is Tribalism is Dumb. And it is a book trying to figure out, why'd everybody go ape shit? Like, why'd everybody go nuts? Why did this all get so toxic in the last few years? And I do think that it's not just me getting older. I think it is qualitatively different now than it was when I was in high school or when I was in elementary school. And it's me trying to sort out, well, what changed? What made everything bad? And just to like kind of head off what I mean by tribalism, I think forming a tribe in the sense that you formed a community and you've got a role in it and you've got people that you're interacting with, that's all wonderful. I think that's great. If you're going to, be into sports or join the Elks Lodge or be active on a Star Trek Discord group, whatever the thing is, that's wonderful. What I mean when I say tribalism in this context is the crappy version of it, the kind of reflexively partisan us versus them. You're not my opponent, you're my enemy. You're an existential threat. And because you are my enemy and an existential threat, I am not only justified, but I am a good person for being a dick to you, to teach you a lesson. And I don't like that.
How do you separate those though? Like how do you parse, because isn't doesn't inherent in forming a tribe, doesn't it end in tribalism? Like, even if we saw this during the whole craziness that we've gone through, like in these freaking weird knitting communities that would end up battling each other
It's my next
because
book.
of wokeness or whatever.
Yeah.
Like it seems like it's so just you can't like pull that out of forming a tribe. I saw this even in places that were like super hippie and you'd be living on a commune together and then little tribes would form and it
Yeah.
was battle.
So yes, both on a small level and on a big level, I think you're right. So what one of the underlying things in the book, one of the big theses in the book is tribalism doesn't go away.
Mhm.
I like as a comic, one of the things that I was surprised to learn was that tribal impulse is just as strong, if not stronger, as our impulse to avoid death and find mates, which is a very clinical way of saying that people are worried about aging and banging. But I'd say like a significant amount of stand-up comedy, including my own, is the travails of dating and bits about getting older, and like really we're dealing with these underlying anxieties that all humans relate to, of reproducing and dying. And I knew that going into comedy. I didn't know that people are just as emphatic about their tribal identity, and I would argue even more. Like I'm a fairly tepid, low T comic, so I don't tend to offend people in general. But my experience
Mhm.
has been that when I make, if I'm getting into banter with an audience member and I'm joking about, I don't know, they're going to die or they're not going to get laid or whatever, they'll laugh that off. If I start like asking probing questions about their tribal identity, they will beat me to death in the parking lot. Like people
Oh
really,
yeah.
they do have that in it. So I don't think it goes away. I think you're absolutely right about that. I think there's two dual impulses that human beings have. We have a positive impulse to group up and be a part of a community and promote that community's well-being, which is very healthy. It's why we defeated the dolphins for supremacy of our species. Go us. We've like tribes are great in that capacity.
Yeah.
The dark bit that is accompanying that can very rapidly get out of hand is it's not just that we want to be a part of a group and promote the group. We have an instinctive desire to go looking for an enemy group to fight. It's kind of like
Mm.
if you're if you're not particularly hungry, or how do let me think, you
It
might smell.
reminds me
Yeah.
Go on. It just
Well,
reminds me of, like, when all the guys I used to hang out with when I was living in Rhode Island would get drunk on St. Patty's Day at the parade or whatever, and they would just gang up and then go looking for a fight. Like,
yep.
it was just what they did. That
Yeah.
was just what they like, hooligans, you know?
It,
They're
it,
just
and it,
like, "Alright, now we're gonna go look for someone's ass to kick."
it
It
is.
was
And it's,
very instinctive.
It is. It is very instinct. Like I think, like for dudes, like we just kind of calm down around 28. Like
Mhm.
I've found my slippage in testosterone to be a really liberating, pleasant experience. Because when you're a guy up till you're 28, you have these weird goddamn urges to climb shit and yell. Like if you just go to
Yeah.
any public park in America on a Friday, there's going to be a group of dudes that are like 21 that are climbing a statue and screaming, and then looking for and then like fighting each other in parking lots. And that kind of like boils into this impulse. We have this inbuilt evolutionary desire to preemptively seek out any threat to whatever our group is, whatever resources they might come take, and it's baked in. But in answer to your other question of like, can any healthy group turn into that kind of negative tribe? Yeah, they can, but I don't think they have to. I don't think that it's preordained. Like one of the reasons that I think that we've become so politically toxic and so politically tribal the last few years is because we've had these collapsing identities in the country. And I think back to my childhood in Oklahoma. Oklahoma's is and was very conservative. I was surprised to discover that the majority of my relatives who were in arm more conservative than I am were registered Democrat. Now, granted,
Mm.
the parties have changed, but when I would talk to them, the way they viewed it was, well, look, like this just wasn't that important to me when I registered to vote. Like we were a one party state. The Democrats were running the show. If I wanted to vote in primaries, I'd vote Democrat, but I don't really think of myself as a Democrat. Like I thought of myself as a Baptist and a farmer and a dad, and I'm a member of the Freemasons. And like those were the things that I built my identity around. And I think when you've got multiple healthy tribes that you're plugging into, it's harder to feel like you are on the defense when somebody's politics rub against you, because it's not your one thing. You have a personality that extends beyond that one thing, so you can just kind of deal with somebody having a contrary opinion in a more pleasant manner. But also because you have all of those other tribes, you're apt to meet people you disagree with, and you're compelled to humanize them in a way. So this is kind of a weird thing for me to say because I am a friendly, low wattage atheist, but I think the decline of religion in America has actually been pretty bad for this, because you can go be at the Baptist church in Norman, Oklahoma, and if that's kind of your primary identity, it's really important to you that you're a Christian and you're reading scripture, you're praying, you're going to church. You're going to meet people in that church that you disagree with, but your primary shared identity is that religious bond. We're brothers and sisters in Christ. And Toby over there, he's a Democrat, but he's a deacon at our church, and I know he's a good
Mhm.
guy. And so I have to come up with some kind of mental schema in which Toby is wrong or we disagree, but he's a good person, and I can see through
Right.
that. When all those other identities start to collapse, the last man standing is politics, and it's very easy in politics to not make those encounters, and then you project all of this garbage onto people you disagree with and you dehumanize them.
Right. What did you come to the conclusion of why this has been so exacerbated, and other than, a million different reasons, but what what was your what really surprised you about researching and writing this book?
The really irritating thing about writing the book is that I had to rewrite it several times because there are millions of reasons that account for this, and I had to twice eat crow and go, "Whoops, I was wrong on that one. Time to
Like,
restart."
which 2?
So the way the book is organized, the first part of the book is me laying the evolutionary groundwork for where all this comes from. That
Yes.
we're a tribal species. I talk about how there's been a couple of bottleneck moments in human history where human beings have been an endangered species. There's about a 200,000 year period where it's not Homo sapiens, it's the guys right before us, but they also walked around, killed stuff with sticks, had fire. From across a parking lot, you wouldn't tell the difference, except the fact they'd probably be naked. But there's a 200,000 year period where we're an endangered species. The human family goes down to about the size of Bixby, Oklahoma, give or take 60,000 people, and they're all living in an area the size of Rhode Island in Africa. And it's really intense resource deprivation. So it's not a situation where if you've got a big orchard and my tribe comes into the orchard and your tribe goes into the orchard, I go, don't worry, we'll just walk over to the next orchard. No, we're there's not enough food for all of us, so there's going to be some hard decisions that are made, and probably the group that is preemptively, proactively aggressive, that has those drunk 21-year-olds looking to fight and just goes out looking to cruise and fight people, they're more likely to survive and pass on that aggressive, proactive, tribalistic behavior. So that's the first third of the book. The second third of the book is your question, which is, well, okay, if that is innate, if that's something that's not unique to our time period, but latent in all humans, what changed to make everybody so dickish? And I had to reevaluate my position a couple of times. So when I first wrote the book, my initial thinking was, because we're so tribal, we have to have an enemy to unite us, and that America won. We defeated the Nazis, and then turns out communism's stupid, and so the Soviet Union imploded under its own big dumb weight. And once we no longer had a Marvel superhero enemy that we could rally against, we turned around and went, well, I guess I don't like you. So that was kind of the starting premise for it. But the more I researched, I was like, it that's a part of it, but it doesn't really hold up to empirical scrutiny. So like you go back to the 60s were a very tumultuous time. I mean, there were
Yeah.
multiple assassinations going on, the Weather Underground's bombing people. You've got MLK shot, RFK shot, JFK shot. Like I think it's hard to argue that the 60s had any type of like particularly convivial moment going on, despite the fact that the Soviet Union was still a menace. So I had to go, well,
Right.
that's not really it. And then I kind of thought maybe it's some of the electoral quirks that we've got in the United States. And I think that that's a contributing factor. We have gerrymandering that's going on in Texas right now. Gerrymandering artificially results in more conservative and more progressive candidates in either party. And we have
Mhm.
first past the polls, and we have closed primaries in most instances. And so, like, it is a contributing factor because only like 6% of people that are eligible to vote in primaries do. And they're usually the most pissed off people. So you're going to
Right.
get situations where the Republicans nominate the most conservative Republican, the Democrats nominate the most progressive Democrat, and then folks like you and me have to pick between King Joffrey and Ramsey Bolton. And like we didn't sign up for any of this. So I think
Yeah.
that's part of it. But then I thought about it more and I was like, well, there are other countries we could compare and contrast here. And then I started looking around and I went, well, the British have a different model. They have a parliamentary system, and they're also like a lot of the things that progressives in our country view as like, if only we could do this thing, then the whole country would be fixed. Well, those things have already largely happened over in the UK. They have socialized healthcare. They are a step to the left of us. A Tory over here would really be a Democrat over there. Barack Obama would comfortably be a Tory in the United Kingdom. And I can report it is not a love fest over here when it comes to politics. Particularly here in Scotland, like I literally had a friend here in Edinburgh when Margaret Thatcher died. I posted on Twitter, "R.I.P. Maggie Thatcher, up in heaven, privatizing the pearly gates." And my friend defriended me because she was offended that I would imply Margaret Thatcher was not in hell. And I called her. It was like, are we really going to end the like? We were able to salvage the friendship, but they're really up in arms. And then you look at like the rest of Europe, like France pretty much has ranked choice voting, which is something I advocate for regularly. France is in for a really fiery time. They've got Marie Le Pen and they've got Macron, and like I don't spend a lot of time in France, but I'm pretty sure if we were to go talk to the French people, they would not say that it's a delightful place with a consensus that they all like. And we could do this all over the board, where there
Mhm.
seems to be rising levels of partisanship and rancor and toxicity around the globe, regardless of the
Mm-hmm.
political system, and even in countries that have different political economies than we are. So I ultimately arrive at, I think the game changing element is technology. I think that's the thing that's changed, that's pissing everybody off. And my thinking on it is, we're living in a time right now kind of comparable to when the printing press was invented. So to get back to religion, Martin Luther didn't have any new ideas, and I'm not saying that to piss off the Lutherans in the audience, but I think Luther would agree with me. He'd go, no, there were all these dudes that precipitated me. There were guys in England that said we should print the Bible, or we have the Bible in an English translation, and then they'd catch that guy and set him on fire. And we should have priests that aren't intermediaries. They'd catch that guy and set him on fire. There was this monopoly on information up until the printing press, where the Catholic Church and the Inquisition was pretty good at identifying and stamping out heresy, and you just couldn't write out pamphlets by hand that quick, so they could kind of stomp down any information that they didn't like that came out. The printing press happens, now you can just crank out pamphlets as fast as you want, and suddenly we're living in a world where ideas can spread faster than anybody can stamp them out. And the result was that Europe no longer has a monopoly. It has more gatekeepers. It no longer has one gatekeeper. It has more gatekeepers. And so Europe went, well, I guess we should just murder each other with swords and cannons for 300 years. And they did. And then eventually they all got tired and become atheists. And then they turned into whatever they are now. But I think we're kind of living in that period. I think between television atrophying a lot of these old communities that we used to be a part of, now we just stay home, watch TV, and the internet and Twitter and social media, that we are engulfed in information, that the information is it's algorithmically designed to be inflammatory and to appeal to our baser instincts, which are pornography and tribalism. And so it's running roughshod, and we as a society have not caught up to that technology yet. So I think that's what's going on. I think that's kind of upset everything, and we're just coping with this sea change right now.
Guys, getting older sucks. That's why it's so important to take care of yourself and pay attention to your health. This is something a lot of men ignore, and it is so important. If you hate going to the doctor and dealing with the hassle, we've got the perfect solution for you. With Quest Health's line of tests for men, you can order a multitude of men's health panel tests that keep you informed about your health. You can check your testosterone levels, get a prostate screening, a colorectal screening, or take their comprehensive men's health profile test for a more complete picture of your health and wellness. Purchase lab tests online, visit a nearby Quest Diagnostics location for a sample collection, no doctor's visit required, or get immediate results at home with at-home test kits. Your results are delivered online, quickly, and discreetly. So prioritize your health and visit questhealth.com today. Use the code Phetasy to get 25% off and find answers to the multitude of health questions you may have. That's questhealth.com and use the code Phetasy for 25% off.
I think a lot about this stuff obsessively. And I think one of the ideas that really stuck with me upon reading Mediated, this book where I've interviewed the author multiple times on the podcast, he was talking about just how the personalization of everything has also added to this, where everything is to your design. You personalize your play. We take it for granted now, but our playlists that we personalize, our phones, everything is flattering us constantly in a way that was not the case.
Yeah.
And that constant flattery of your ideas, and now with AI, I mean, it reminds me of that movie, The Devil's Advocate, where he's like, my
With Al Pacino?
vanity is my favorite deadly sin. And I mean, nothing is more flattering than AI. I've been joking that AI talks to everybody the way, like, I'm around enough celebrities, and you've been, that you see the way people talk to them, and you're like, this is just AI with everyone. AI talks to all of us like this is exactly the experience of being a celebrity. That is how AI talks to you. Like, yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I think that is adding to that tribalism, because you're not really having very much push. Everything's flattering you and nothing's really pushing back. People are too afraid. And at the same time, people don't really, they're okay with confrontation online because there's no threat of physical violence, but people in real life can get, unless they're kind of unhinged, they seem very
Yeah.
anti-confrontation in a way
Yeah.
that is, I don't know that it's necessarily healthy because they're afraid to even have like a mild disagreement with anybody.
God, that's a good point. I hadn't even thought about that. That like I'm focusing so much on the toxic part. I think you're right. We've become like avoidant in the meat realm, in meat
Mhm.
space. I think you're right about that.
Mhm.
And I like,
Mhm.
it's not surprising that these things would happen where like I was thinking about this because I do think people have become real dickheads about politics, but probably 90% of the horrible stuff I've encountered has been people online. And
Right.
I think the reason for that is, um, as human beings, we have this really strong evolutionary impulse to get along with the people around us, avoid conflict, don't make waves. I don't think our monkey brains register that the person on Twitter is a person. Like our
Yeah.
monkey brain, which is the part of our brain that's thinking about that, it views Twitter very much the same way your dog views a phone call. Like I'm in Scotland right now. My dog Wallace is in DC. If I call Wallace, he's just going to smell the phone. He doesn't understand that
Right.
there's a person on the other end. So the censorship mechanism we have doesn't go through any of that. So you don't have the same impulse control you have when you're sitting across from somebody. But I think you're right, though. I hadn't even thought about that, though. We're also kind of traumatized by the toxic bit. I'm very avoidant in physical conversations now in a way that's not healthy because
Yeah.
I'm very capable of going, I've got this viewpoint. I don't demonize people for having other opinions of me, but I shirk away from those conversations. Maybe it'd be better if we became a little bit more conflict prone in person so that we could develop that skill set.
Well, this is one of the reasons we were talking about this on Real America the other night, and I thought it was really interesting. We had a whole conversation about education, and we started talking about kind of wokeness, whatever you want to call it, how it kind of infected all of the institutions, but mostly because there was lack of viewpoint diversity. Nobody was really butting heads with one another in classes or even with their teachers, or they were more just trying to say the right thing to get along, which has primed them to just go with AI because it almost gave them the framework to just run with AI because they're not they we were already losing critical thinking. And now why would kids see any value in it? They were of a generation that already had kind of lost it because there was very little viewpoint diversity in their K through 12 and even especially in the higher education. One of the other things that I was thinking about when I was reading your book because of just a funny, stupid little thing that happened to me that got me thinking a lot about monkey brain and tribalism because I happened to be reading your book at the same time I made this catastrophic decision to change 2 drawers in my kitchen that had been bugging me. So I've been in my house for 2 years and I put the and it's of course like the utensil drawer and the mittens for the stove. And I was like, this is dumb. Why did I do this? I put the gloves, they should be closer to the oven. I'm always reaching over this drawer to get the to get the gloves. And I should have put the utensils closer to the dishwasher so it's just easier to unload. And so I switched them. And I have yet to open the correct drawer. It is, and I was saying to my husband, I'm like, this is from 2 years of us doing this just without thinking. Can you imagine thousands of years of evolution that we have that we're trying to undo because of this
Yeah.
new technology that we added? Just the simple things that we did as humans for like thousands of years. And now in 100 years, we're supposed to like catch up. I'm like, when he's like, I still haven't opened the right drawer. It's like, it was like such a weirdly, um, I don't know why I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. It's an exercise in a couple of things for me. One, lack of presence, just how on autopilot we put things just so quickly. Even things that aren't necessarily the best system. It's like my husband and I have been talking about this. It's not a great system. And he's like, it does show you why people would maintain a bad system, because changing those pathways in your brain is so hard. It's the dumbest. I don't know if this makes any sense,
Yeah, no,
that
no,
what
no.
I'm talking about.
I follow like a quick monkey brain addendum that I don't think's in the book, because it wouldn't be germane to it. Is I've got a theory. Like, you ever walk into the kitchen and you're like, why am I here? Why did I come in
Yeah.
here? I know what this is my theory. I think that as monkeys, like way back in the day, if you went from under a canopy to in the savannah, completely different set of predators, so your brain would reset. So just whenever whatever above you would change, your brain would go, stop, look around, what are you doing? Like, you're in a cave now, there are bears in a cave, this is different than when you're in the tall grass, look around you. So I think when you enter a new room, our monkey brains are like, gotta check for bears. I think that's what's going on, why we feel like idiots when we walk into the kitchen. And
I really want a book of all of these things, like all the things that we did for hundreds of thousands of years that we're just expecting to like rewire,
yeah,
because it was just such a stupid, simple lesson. And I'm like, I feel like a retard every time I do this too. Every time I open the wrong drawer, I'm like, how did I do it again? But it's just not thinking,
yeah,
habit. It's wild though. And I was like, why do I expect that I'm going to be able to catch up to this technology with
yeah.
my dumb monkey brain that can't even handle changing to where things are in my kitchen?
Well, now, like, some of it I think actually makes a lot of sense. Like, I've got a degree of sympathy to some extent for people that have become very partisan, in that we have more information going on now than ever, like ever. Like, I looked it up. Like, the year I was born in '84. The year I was born, if you added up all the printed words in the entire planet that were published that year, it'd be like an hour today. Just the sheer onslaught of information is so high, and fortunately, we've got rid of the gatekeepers. I'm glad that we got rid of the gatekeepers. It allows you and me to have a living. I'm beneficial from this. I don't work for a big network. I'm independent on my podcast, but the result is that there's this huge glut of information. And I think, kind of logically, what people have done is gone, well, I can't spend 6 hours a day fact checking the Guardian, or reading the Guardian and then
Oh
reading Fox
no,
and then
it's
reading, and then you're going through all these things. So they go, I'm just going to pick one I broadly agree with and hope they got it right. And I'm like, yeah, it doesn't work super well, but I get why you did that.
yeah, it's a shortcut. It's who has time for that? I had do you know Paul Shirley? I don't know if you know him, but he's been my writing coach. He has also written many books, and he has a new book out that's just all about kind of the simplicity of process. And he talks about this as like informational diabetes. It's the same thing, because it was something I never really thought about, how there's actually no capacity for us to stop wanting information, because it was so beneficial to us to
Yeah.
have any kind of
Oh,
information when
right.
we were those monkeys.
Yeah.
And just like sugar, when we found it, we had to have as much as we could. And now it's everywhere. And I thought it was such a really brilliant idea concept of informational diabetes, where we're just binging on it and there's no real ceiling for what we think is enough.
I think that's spot on. I'll give you one more monkey example. I found this awesome BBC documentary about drunk monkeys in the Caribbean. I don't remember the name of the island, but it's like St. Lupus or something like that. St. Lupus Island. And on St. Lupus, historically, you have a population of New World green vervet monkeys, and they lived there pre-humans and even post-humans. And in that particular environment, they evolved where sugar cane would naturally grow. It would split, and then it would rain, and water would fill up the sugar cane. And the monkeys would drink the sugar cane because it's high in high in calories. They get that sugar, they need it. They're not going to starve to death. The result was that they developed kind of a taste for alcohol because the sugar would ferment, but at a very low level, not a very high level. Fine, no problem for the monkeys. Then resorts moved into St. Lupus Island. And now you have all these Americans and Brits and French people that are drinking Mai Tais. And the monkeys are like, this is great. Sugar and alcohol? What I have been evolutionarily designed to get? Terrific. And the monkeys get blackout drunk. There's these awesome videos of monkeys like running up, just grabbing a pina colada, chugging it, throwing it down, and then you'll see like monkeys in the background falling off of chairs. And it's like, yeah, that makes sense because they're wired to do this particular thing, and the situation changed, and they've not caught up with it yet. So I think that's kind of where we are. I should have called them
We're the
drunk
drunk
monkeys.
monkeys. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really funny.
Well, Bridget, can I ask? You mentioned earlier that you've changed some of your opinions on tribalism, or you think about it differently. What's altered for you?
I don't know. I've received a lot of pushback for my Little Miss Captain of the Fence Riding team positions, which is funny because the culture has now shifted to exactly where we are, thanks in part to kind of Epstein and just like the great realignment. Really, it was like I feel like someone else, maybe Eric Weinstein or Weinstein, has made this analogy that it's like someone took the table and just like knocked over the puzzle and all the puzzle pieces are falling down from the sky, something weird and probably incoherent and but somewhat makes sense. And you're like, I kind of perceive what you may be trying to say. It feels that way though, and I was saying this even before the great realignment happened during this election, that for me, it felt like someone had broken a mirror and all the pieces of glass were reflecting off one another. And because you were seeing like the left started sounding more like the right, and you've got this kind of whatever you want to call it, woke right. I don't know that I necessarily love that term, but there I had a great conversation with Local Distance on Twitter, Mike Young, and he was talking about how postmodernism has kind of infected literally everything. It's the water we're swimming in. So this deconstruction of everything is everywhere, and that can lead to this feeling of everything being confused. So I think a lot of the culture is actually where I was, but somebody said something to me when leading up to this election on like I think it was probably on one of my dumpster fire live chats that I was doing. And they said, and this is never, it's funny, just like grow up usually doesn't affect me that much, but they said, just grow up and pick whoever is going to give you the most freedom. Like you have two choices, grow up. And now people can have all kinds of feelings about that, but there was something in that moment that resonated with me where it was like, yeah, why don't I just pick whatever team I feel like is going to give me the most freedom right now? Now, I say this as, Trump is allegedly banning flag burnings, and I'm not really that convinced that anyone is that interested in free speech or freedom, true liberty and freedom in the way that perhaps our founders envisioned it anymore. And maybe that's what's changed. Maybe I'm more I think I've become more locally tribal in the sense
Okay.
that this stuff all feels insane to me and crazy. And then you add AI to it, which has been another printing press game changer. And I can't control any of it. What I can control is my tiny family and taking care of them. And that's really all that matters. Taking care of like the people that I love, my in-laws. I like cooking for people who just had babies. I like just being more locally community oriented in that respect. And somebody was asking me this at lunch yesterday. She was like, "How are you staying sane in all of this?" I was like, "You can't those for me to think that my monkey brain is more powerful than those algorithms is a fool's errand. It is ridiculous for me to think that billions of dollars that go into manipulating me and getting me to pay attention to this, using my dopamine and all of these monkey things that they've studied is insane." And my sister actually said something to me too. She said, if the algorithms are only feeding us what we want, aren't we just brainwashing ourselves? And I was like, yeah,
Recursive loops. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, we are. It is true. So that was a big wake up call. And then I think I guess I went from thinking tribalism was dumb like you to thinking maybe it has its place. I
Well,
guess I have more of an appreciation for it.
sure. Well, and it's okay if we disagree on this one, but I want to make sure that we're talking about the same thing. I don't have a problem with people being Republicans or Democrats or libertarians, and I want there to be people. My problem is when a Republican or a Democrat or a libertarian infers that whoever disagrees with them is willfully evil and
Right. The
should be
ism.
treated as such. Yeah, it's more of the like maybe I could call it toxic partisanship might be a way to do it. So like I'm an
Mhm.
independent and I probably am I have such deep set fears of commitment, Bridget, that I probably can't really integrate into any coherent political or religious system. And that's on me. Uh,
You're like
but
me with tattoos.
yeah, yeah,
That's the big red flag. Like,
yeah.
ooh, she's got commitment
Uh,
issues.
but I don't I mean I think people have to organize to do stuff. It's more of like it's more when politics becomes the totality of somebody's identity that I think's the problem. And then
Yeah.
when they go from that to assuming that everybody else is bad. Like I'm very much an optimist and I like America and I think that fortunately I think most of the people in America are pretty decent people. I think that the majority of people that you encounter in real life, online is a big exception to this, but in real life, I think most of the people you encounter, we broadly share the same values. Most of the conflicts that we have are when those values come into juxtaposition. We got to figure out which one is top, or we're trying to solve problems. And there's really dumb solutions to those problems that I fight against that I'm going to tackle. But I can look at like I don't know, like talking about like Trump tariffs or maybe the wall or kind of pick your thing. I can look at it and go, I understand what you're trying to do. I disagree with how
Mhm.
you're trying to get there, and I want to fight with
Mhm.
you on that, not because I think that you're a shitty person, but because I care about the outcome of it. But I still kind of view us as on the same team, the same way a prosecutor and a defendant are weirdly on the same team when they're going at it hard. But I can
Yeah.
also be friends with that prosecutor or that defense attorney afterward. I can be neighbors with them. I guess that's the main thing is I think if like whatever your political thing is, if you can live in the same neighborhood and get along with people you disagree with, then you're fine. That like that
Yeah.
I'm not inveighing against you.
Yeah. No, I agree with this. I don't more upsetting to me has been seeing people make this their entire personality, and that's kind of what I beg people to not do because and I actually do blame podcasts for this ironically in a lot of ways because people are kind of in your head and you have these like parasocial relationships with people which I've become friends with a lot of the people that are fans or whatever so I think there's more of a two-way street and I really like knowing a lot of the people who consume my content and like what's going on in their life and a more personal level. But I think if you are, I get it, it's become a kind of a national hobby for a lot of
Yeah.
people to consume all of this stuff. And I just keep being like, please go learn chess or something,
Yeah.
like you have such a brilliant mind go do something anything else with it, anything. I cook, I took the whole weekend and all I did was cook. I cooked for my in-laws, I cooked for the woman who a woman who takes helps me take care of my kid, she like she's like a nanny type, but not a nanny, like, I guess we could call her a nanny. I think of nannies as, like, people who are there every day, all day because I come from LA, but she's like our nanny, and I made her food just I just wanna if I could just pivot to cooking all day, I would. I've had some upsetting lunches with people who I think have truly been internet poisoned, people in real life, and they are what they don't realize and even going home, talking to family members was I just came back from vacation, it was very much everybody comes from a different political place. I'm at a disadvantage to some degrees because I'm very outspoken about what I'm doing and thinking, and people can have their feelings about that, but everybody was still fine. We're still family. We were raised very much. It made for some interesting conversations, but I don't know. It just because I live and breathe this stuff, I think normies who have ingested a lot of this stuff don't realize that I'm like, I know everything you're saying. I know where you're getting this from. Like, I can tell
Yeah.
you exactly which podcast you're listening to. I know exactly what media bubble you're in just from what you're saying to me, because I've lived in this fucked up center and been attacked by literally everyone from every tribe. It
Yep.
has made me more aware of, like, tell me what you believe, and I can tell you exactly what media bubble you're in.
One of the most surprising things that I found researching the book, there was a study that I read where people that self-describe themselves as extremely lonely are 8 times more likely to be politically active than people who aren't. And I went, that explains so much of what we're going through right now.
Yeah.
Because like I think about, like, yeah, most of the people that are irritatingly political, that's their whole thing. And then, like, you kind of talk to them, you're like, are you on a kickball team? No. You should go do a kickball team. Like, I think a lot of it is that kind of like getting out of whack bit. You need to have stuff that's non-political. You need to have other sources of community and identity. And I get it, because if you're really lonely, you get to plug into this political superstructure, and you've got a reason to get up in the morning, and you've got a bad guy to fight, and you're on a team with everybody. So it fills that need that people have, but it's such a shitty substitute. Like, I would far rather people get into Star Wars or football than
But
really
this
get
has
into.
all been ruined by politics.
Yeah.
This is another thing that I've been really focusing on and writing about and thinking about is you just named 2 things that I do blame the left for this. The became political. Like, the Disney is like, "We need to get men back," and you're like, "You had Star Wars, you had all of these brands that were male oriented, and then you needed to, as South Park says, make them lame and gay, and and now you're wondering where all the men went." And you didn't even need to make it like a male thing. You just needed to keep telling good stories in the way that and not trying to force all this stuff. So on the one hand, it's this is something I've been thinking about so much from your book and from all of this other writing I've been doing. Part of it is the individual fault, part of it is social media, part of it was this weird top down, I don't hate the word because it's a lazy shortcut for like postmodern critical theory, but no one fucking knows what that is. But the like wokeification of everything forced people to pick a side. Now every stupid freaking thing is a culture war.
Yeah.
Cracker Barrel, Sydney Sweeney, which
Like
was
Bud Light,
amazing.
like a year and a half ago, Bud
Bud
Light
Light.
became like a transgender flashpoint, and I was like, this would be such a weird thing to explain 20 years ago, that
Yeah.
an objectively bad beer has somehow become known for something other than that. Or like I guess this is now like 5, 6 years old. I'm not a sports guy. I didn't like the Colin Kaepernick thing. He might have had good points, but I didn't like it because I was like, I want there to be a place where we can all come not be political. And I think sports is pretty good for that. And I was like,
Yeah.
please don't turn this into a thing where everybody
Yeah.
has to wear red hats and blue hats when they enter the stadium. That just strikes me as a horrible idea.
Well, so much of our tribalism went into sports,
Yeah.
and then you had, like, end racism in the end zones, and you're like, "Ah, shit." Like, it's fine. Nobody's and then if you don't like that, you're suddenly again you're pro racism. You're like, "No, I just wanted to, like, not
I
think
just
about this
wanted to watch
for 2
baseball for a little
hours."
bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think
Yeah.
another thing too on the woke thing is me. So I've 2 majors when I did undergraduate. I did history and I did religious studies, and so I've read a fair amount of religious anthropology. And there is a kind of like nascent secular religion in the United States. Like, for lack of a better term, wokeism functions that way. And what I mean
Totally.
by that is like there are tenets of it that are very religious in nature, of like there are certain words that are magical where if you utter them, Like they cannot be uttered in any context. Well, that's a
Right.
way of thinking. I don't think words are magical. I think that it depends on context and intent. So if I'm just having a conversation with you about something real toxic, like the N word or whatever, if I'm saying it, just describing it, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. But that's kind of been elevated to a no. This is a blasphemy. It cannot be spoken out loud. There are heretical ways of thinking, and blasphemy and heresy are different. Blasphemy is the thing cannot be uttered. Heresy is bad belief, and you must be
Mhm.
brought to heel if you have this particular belief. So I think particularly around 2016, 2017, I think it reached this high watermark 18, 19. There was this kind of like
2021, 2020,
that's true.
2021 was
Yeah.
insane. We had
And it
people
and it
like washing people's feet. It was don't
yes.
don't forget
Oh
about
no.
the
There
George
no,
Floyd
no,
years.
you're right. That yeah, no, literally washing people's feet
Yeah.
and it was like from where I was at, I was like, "Hey gang, I'm over here in the friendly atheist camp. Like I think pretty secular. You're not being secular. You're taking
Mm,
like Puritanism and you're just like taking out Jesus and dropping in Captain Planet and an anti-racist person, but you're keeping all of those constructs. And then, but if you point it out, they get really angry because they're like, "No, I'm too smart to be religious." And I'm like, "Well, from where I'm looking at, I don't think either of those tenets is correct. Like, I don't think you're dumb if you're religious, nor do I think you're too smart to be like you're doing this now. We're having this kind of proxy holy war going on between like older established religion and this new religion that hates them, but you can't call it a religion. And it was very weird.
well, and it goes back to this monkey brain that we've been talking about, and I think Jonathan Haidt has talked about this a lot. Is there kind of this need to have a religion? Like, is there a human kind of religion gene? Like,
Yeah,
do we need to believe in something in that kind of way? It
I think
doesn't
so.
seem like we can really get outside of it no matter how hard we try. Even one of the reasons I always consider myself when I was a recovering Catholic more agnostic than atheist, even though I kind of dabbled in atheism, was that they would proselytize in the same way that religious people would. So I was like, "All right, you're atheist, like, who oh, okay, we get it, you don't believe. That doesn't mean it's not tr you're so certain that there's nothing." It was just this, like, same kind of almost religious certainty in
Yeah.
the anti-ness of
Yeah.
God
Yeah.
that I was like, "All right,
No,
this is the other
for
side of the coin. You're
what
just."
what one of my jokes in stand up is I say I'm an agnostic, and then I go, "Does anybody know what an agnostic is?" And like one or two people raise their hand, and I'll go, "An agnostic is an atheist who's decided not to be an asshole about it," which is where I find myself. And I have to like when I talk to my religious friends, I'm like, "By the way, I hope you're right. I don't want it to be lights out. I'm not rooting for it. I hope I'm wrong about that," which I think helps me like interact with other people. I'm like, "I don't know. I'm rooting for you. I would
Yeah.
love it if I'm reunited with my dog and my grandpa when I die. That sounds terrific." I think that that's probably inbuilt into the human condition. I'm with Jonathan Haidt on that. The like I think the religious perspective would be that God made human beings in his image and therefore has put a desire for us to know God in him. The anthropological variant of that would be that religion is a pro-social evolutionary tool. So I'm not saying that you have to pick one or the other, but I'm going to look at this from the evolutionary side. If you're religious, you can think this is something God built in. I don't, but what I'm about to say doesn't have to conflict with you if you're religious. From an evolutionary perspective, one of the big problems we've got is we're not designed to live in big groups of people. There's a fascinating thing called Dunbar's number, where a British sociologist named Robin Dunbar he took all the different brain pan sizes of primates, like 220 of them, capuchin monkeys, those green vervet monkeys on St. Lupus Island. He took all of them. Then he put next to them in the column their maximum group size. So like chimps get the biggest groups other than us, and then gorillas, and then it keeps going down, right? He developed this
Mhm.
algorithm, and he came up with a predictive algorithm. Show me the brain pan size of the primate. I'll show you how big the group can get. Then he plugged in human beings' brain pan size, and he came up with 150, thereabouts, 150. So this appears to be the natural group number that we as human beings have. And if you think about it, 150 is about as big as a group can get before you no longer understand people as individuals in that group. You get past 150, you start needing name tags, you start needing intermediaries, you need managers, you need judges, you need things like that. We're not designed for it. Now we've pretty beautifully scaled up. We've done a very good. You can't get 200 chimps on a plane. They're going to murder each other if they don't know each other. That won't work. We're doing real well. But one of the things that we probably came up with that's wired into us is that allows us to scale up is this religious impulse where we are able to come up with social constructs that are beneficial, that we all act as if it's a law of physics. And so like using non-religious terminology for a minute, like money is a great example of this. Like money's not real, we made it up, but it works really well if we pretend it's a real thing. So it's a social construct that's really, really beneficial. Or like nation states, like there's no actual geographical delineation between Canada and the United States. It's a made up boundary. It's just something we put on a map. Like latitude lines are made up, but it works real well in terms of being able to organize stuff. And one of the features that evolution seems to have built in is, well, Bridget and I don't know each other. We're not in the same family. She's not a cousin of mine, so we don't have any of these natural kinship links that we would be able to facilitate. But Bridget and I both believe in the moose god. We're out in the pagan plains of Scandinavia 3,000 years ago. We both believe in the moose god. So aren't we kind of children of the moose god? If you think about it, we're all part of the same broad family, and we're able to create these artificial kinship networks that are really, really useful as we scale up. And then at the same time, if Bridget and I really believe in the moose god, we truly believe in the moose god, and I go, I'm not going to screw you over in this. If you buy these elk pelts from me and you give me a bone flute, I promise I'm not going to screw you over because I fear the wrath of the moose god. So we both have this third party we agree is going to judge our actions that will compel us to act more honest. And that allows us to have more social trust, so that we can go to a restaurant, pay for the meal, and then, or excuse me, have the meal, then pay for the meal. Nobody's worried that we're going to run out without paying for the meal. So I think that evolution actually built religion into us in a very pro-social way to engender social trust and to allow us to scale up and get past our parochial kinship network. So I don't think it's going away. I think it's built in. And I think if you tried to get rid of it, like that impulse, you'd also get rid of the part of us that understands that money is a thing. You'd get rid of all of the concepts we have, like democracy, liberalism, women's rights, like all those things that we are kind of religious. Like we, in America, we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. We put our hand over our heart. We sing a sacred hymn. Like
I don't think we do that anymore.
Excuse me. Well, me being from Oklahoma, I'm basically from the 50s. So back in the 50s where I grew up, we still do that. But they function the same. We don't think of them as religion, but it's the same muscle. And you can't get rid of the religion bit without getting rid of all those other muscles that are so useful for modern society or inner society.
I think a lot of the stuff that I've been thinking about too in regards to tribalism is social trust, because there does seem to be this massive breakdown of it. And there's such a simple, beautiful example of it in my basic bitch suburb where I reside now. It is these little gnomes, and they're just out on somebody's it's just like a fence that covers like a propane tank or whatever, one of those things that's like in front of your house that you're trying to cover. And they're always there. And if they're missing, we're like, where are they? And then they're like, oh, they're sleeping down here in the flower bed. Like some kid came along. But I was like, nothing is a better example of social trust than the fact that these little stone cute gnomes, they get moved around. My daughter thinks they move on their own because they're always in a different position, and kids come along and adults and play with them and line them up. And sometimes they're doing a parade, and it's the cutest thing, and it is the best example of social trust. I'm like, this is why people like the suburbs. This shit would be gone in one day. I had a lemon tree stolen off my front porch in Los Angeles. A Meyer lemon tree stolen.
What do you think? So I just went to Finland. Like I said, I think I told you I went to Scandinavia and Finland. They're not Scandinavians. They're big on that. They're Nords, not Scandinavians.
Okay.
They all look like Ned Flanders, but they're very happy. And I went over to talk to these
They
Ned
sound
Flanders.
like Ned Flanders too.
Yeah, so like okay,
Just like a
9 out of
country of Ned
but
Flanders.
it's a whole country of Ned Flanders, but then about 1 out of every 10 guys is on his way to a heavy metal concert. So like imagine like it's like Ned Flanders and like some variant of Weird Al as a Viking.
Uh-huh.
That's the whole thing. They have really, really high social trust. And I wanted to talk to them about like, why do you have such high social trust? Most of the people I talked to went, it's because we have such a good social safety net. So that we don't have any economic insecurity. And I'm like, I think that's probably part of it. And it's probably a big part of it. But there were these other bits where I was like, well, like, but also, um, if you just grab a random person in Finland, they probably have pretty much the exact same demography and values that you have. Like, they're going to be a guy that looks like Ned Flanders that goes to a Lutheran church once a year, but doesn't care about it the other 364 days, who's like a center left European centrist, give or take 5 degrees. So I'm like, yeah, like that. I would think you'd have real high social trust if you infer that everybody else is kind of you. And then the other bit is they're we're really mobile as Americans. You went to school in Minnesota, you lived in Rhode
Yeah.
Island, you were in LA for a long time, now you're in Austin. I've done my own circuitous loop thing. I think if you're a really mobile society, you just don't get to have that much social trust. Like when I go back
Mhm.
to Oklahoma, if I go to Alva, which is where the Heaton family's from, like I was there a few years ago, and when I was in college, and I mentioned, hey, I made this new friend. You might know his family. He said his grandparents run the cinema, and my uncle's like, oh, that'd be the Purser family. Yes, Mitch
Yeah.
used to go deer hunting with your grandpa back in the 40s, and your Uncle Gary went to prom with his daughter Cecilia. Now she moved from Maplethorpe over to Third Street in the 80s, but I believe but like man, everybody knew how everybody factored into that town. And I was like, I get how you have high social trust when you know everybody in the equation going back 3 generations.
Yeah, this
You
is
can just
Rhode
walk
Island.
around and know. And like, yeah,
Yeah.
like conversely, though, New York City, Washington D.C., when it's transient, even if people are nice, you don't know who they are, and so the social trust declines.
Yeah, that's funny too, like, even my husband always laughs at, like, how I become an island person the minute I get to Rhode Island. He's like, "What happens to your brain?" Because, he's like, "How do I" he'll be driving, and I'm the one who knows my way around, and if he's driving, he's like, "Can you navigate? Tell me which street to go on?" And I'm like, "I don't know street names." And he's like, "What do you mean you don't know street names?" I'm like, "I just sort of feel my way around. It's just kind of muscle memory." I'm like, "No one knows street names. They just know how to tell you, like, you go right where the Cumberland Farms used to be." You know?
Yeah,
Like,
you know Dave Barry? I love Dave Barry. He has a thing about how like whenever you ask anybody for directions, it turns into a weird travelogue. Like, because you're like, hey, I'm trying to get to the grocery store, and they're like, well, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Go about 3 blocks north. You're gonna go right past the Elm. Then you're gonna turn left past the. You know, it's not a school anymore. Now it's a Jiffy Lube. But you're gonna turn past the Jiffy Lube, and it's like you could just say like, go to Fourth, turn right, then turn left. But like everybody thinks that way. We want to give you the journey.
they don't even know, but in Rhode Island, I couldn't even tell you the street names. It's
Yeah.
truly like I just like feel my way around. My daughter who likes to try to imitate Siri or like the directions, she likes to be like, "Go right," after she hears it, if we're doing navigation. She was like, "Mommy, which way are we going?" And Jaren's like, "She just kind of vibes her way around. She doesn't really like know which direction she's heading in. It's more of just muscle memory." I'm like, but it literally is. I drove around high. We would just get stoned and drive around that island when we were teenagers. I still have no, I know like maybe 3 main road names, but the rest, even roads I lived on, couldn't tell you.
Well, plus my brain's completely rotted by smartphones now. Like when I
Oh,
was in high school, like you did have to know like muscle memory, but you know where you were. And like now I'm so used to using GPS. There are certain routes that I know, but after that, like when I lived in Austin, I didn't know the highway south of me for the first
oh,
year and a
wow.
half. I was like, I don't
I
know.
try to not use it unless I have to. I'll look and see traffic wise what's going on, but I try very hard to like maintain some sense of direction. My husband is like, put a chip in me and just let it be the thing that allows me to pay for everything, opens all my doors. I don't know. Men, I feel like are so much more accepting of this kind of Siri. I'm like, I don't want that bitch in my house. Get her out. Oh no, she just turned on. She just turned on the iPad. What do you think? Oh shoot, now she's on the screen. I activated I
You can
activated
invite
her.
her in. It's fine. We'll have her on.
Come on in. I do want to ask you what you think about, tribalism and comedy. What's your experience of comedy, how this plays into breaking down some of tribalism? What is your feeling on that?
Yeah. I think comedy works really, really well for challenging and disseminating ideas. I think it works probably better than anything else. Like one of the things I've learned, I don't know what your experience has been, but my experience has been if I'm doing political humor, because I do a lot of political humor for reason, and I'll get booked to do gigs where it's a political thing. If I were engaging in conversation with somebody and I were making an argument in favor of the thing I believe, they'll kind of tune me out pretty quick. They'll figure out where I'm coming from and they're like, nah, don't want to hear this. But if I've got a joke, most people will stick around for the punchline.
Yeah.
And if it's funny, they'll laugh at it. And so there is this kind of lubrication that humor creates where you can briefly transmit other ideas that'll go over to the other person. So I find it to be really good. I think like to borrow from Chris Bliss, who's a very funny comedian, he talks about how if we're getting into an argument, we're going to start getting cortisol and adrenaline, which make shut your brain down. You're not open to other ideas when you have a lot of cortisol and adrenaline in you. Whereas with comedy, you're getting dopamine, and that makes you more receptive to other ideas. So I think comedy is really good for bringing people in. Plus, my experience has been the majority of people that go to comedy clubs are there to laugh. Like
Yeah.
comedy, I think was much less assailed by partisanship, wokeism, all that stuff. It did hit it, and there was a lot of clapter that bludgeoned our industry starting around 2016. But that being said, though, there was an understanding of like, look, people are here to have a good time. They're here to laugh, and that provided a lot more openness and a lot more latitude to come in. Plus, I think like comedy works really well. In general, when it's zeroing in on uncomfortable ambiguities in culture and society. And so I think
Mhm.
it's really good for that. So if people are feeling confused, like, I don't know, in my case, it'd probably be more stuff along the lines of like, why is everybody a dick? And if I can do that, there's going to be people in there. They're like, oh, I couldn't quite articulate that. But I think comedy's very good at it. Like, when I first started doing stand up, I, I looked at everybody was telling me to watch a particular stand-up special. The guy's name escapes my mind now. He caught on fire one time. He had a bit about that, like he was smoking crack and he caught fire. You know what I'm talking about? You know what? It'll come to me in a minute. But I listened to his stand-up special that was from like 1970. The first 10 minutes are about masturbation jokes, and I was really thrown off by that. I was like, having been a veteran of many really crappy open mics, I have heard more masturbation jokes than are permitted under the Geneva Convention. I don't need to hear any more shitty masturbation jokes. But I thought about it, and it was like, well, that guy in 1970 was probably talking to a room full of people that had never openly discussed that with anyone. Like the whole room thought they were perverts that did this weird thing in their closet that nobody else knew about. And I think comedy's really good for that. Comedy's really good for blowing the lid off of these tectonic plates that are coming up against each other that society hasn't really figured out yet. Like I think Bill
Are
Burr's really
are
good
you
about
talking
this.
about Richard Pryor?
That's it. Richard Pryor. Thank
Okay.
you. That's it. I was going to feel bad about that. Richard Pryor, right? And at first I was kind of disappointed in him. Then I thought about it. I was like, no, actually, like now masturbation jokes are a lot more passe, and it's something that like you can kind of discuss at a bar. But like back in the day, I don't think people were talking about it. So I think comedy is good for that. Obviously, it can weaponize it, but there too, like I find that with fellow comedians, I find I guess we're being tribal, but at least it's tribal towards other comedians rather than towards a
Yeah.
political party. I find that my instincts are not to assess whether the comedian is liberal or conservative or libertarian. I instinctively want to defend the comedian. So
Yeah.
when they get into hot water, I'm like, hey, you're coming into their house. You got to look at the context of what they're saying. You got to look at the intent of what they're saying. So yeah, it does form a tribe, but the benefit there too is like I kind of feel like when I go into a comedy club, the other comedians have my back. Where if I
Yeah.
say something that they politically disagree with, they might say something funny about that on stage. Maybe we'll fight about it afterwards at the bar. But if I get in trouble with the audience or the club, I kind of feel like the other comedians are going to come help me, even if we voted different.
That's how I think it's reverting more back to that. That's how it was, and then that was what was so disorienting for me in 2015, 2016 is that I thought the comedian tribe kind of trumped everything, and it definitely split. There was definitely like a rift in comedy, and you were either speaking truth to power or you were just like one of these kind of dirty old comedians who just made jokes at everybody's expense. And that was very disorienting for me in 2015, 2016 in Los Angeles. Maybe it wasn't that way everywhere else, but I think comedy ultimately suffered for it. And
the clap, which was horrible. Like
yeah.
the amount, I have no time for that. Like, you're a comedian, it's your job to make jokes. Don't go out there and get applause. That's not your job. Make jokes. The amount, I'm not a Trump guy. I don't like Trump, but I'm not going to give you credit for just saying you don't like Trump. You need to make a funny joke.
Yeah.
You have to get up and make humor. You don't get to just say something I agree with and have me give you credit. My God, there were so many shitty comics that slipped in during those years that would just they would just say political opinion. They would do stand up politics, and then people
Yeah.
would applaud them for it. And I was like, no, I would rather laugh at somebody I disagree with than applaud somebody I agree with.
Yeah. My favorite joke I'm doing right now that I love because no one knows how to take it in the political vein is, speaking of retarded, I voted for Trump.
Oh, that's great. That's great. You can't
I
even
know.
get
I knew
passionate
you would
on that.
appreciate that one.
Yeah.
It's like neither person really knows how to feel about it. However you feel about him, you're like, I don't know how to feel about that joke.
Yeah.
If you're pro or anti.
I like that. I also I like it when comics add that uncertainty and ambiguity, and you're like, I don't quite know where they're coming from. That's good. I like
don't
it
know
when I
how to
get
feel about this.
people in boxes. Yeah.
What is your biggest defect of character?
I think I probably have two. Well, how about this? I'm 41. I wish I was married with kids, and I'm not married with kids. So there's something there. I got to figure what that is. We'll do a whole nother episode on all the multifaceted problems that have probably contributed to that state of affairs. Maybe fear of commitment factors in. I don't really know. I say the other one is I think I am conflict avoidant to a fault. I don't like making waves. I don't like making ripples. I think overall we could use a little bit more Mr. Rogers right now. We've got too many people pretending to be Churchill. We could use more Mr. Rogers. So by and large, if that's where I'm going to err, it's not horrible. That being said, though, it would behoove me to confront people when they say something shitty, or to be able to just go, "Hey, I disagree. Here's why." I think I can be more passive, and it's like on the political orphanage. That is something that I would like to work on, of being able to interrupt people. If I get somebody on the show that wants to filibuster, I'm polite enough that I'll give them the platform. And at some point, they're taking advantage of me in the audience, and it would be in my best interest and their interest to interrupt the person and go, "Hey, I need to get a word in edgewise." So something like that. How about you?
Wow. There's so many. Mine, I think I suffer from an over. I would say actually ambition is pretty negative right now. I like to think that if I was married to a billionaire, I wouldn't be doing all the things I'm doing, but I think that's bullshit, and I think I can call myself on that, even
Why
though
would
I
that be
don't.
bad though? If you were you're producing a show people like, you're providing joy and insight both through comedy and all the programs you do. So you're contributing. That would be a good thing if you were married to a billionaire and you were still doing what you do.
Because it still takes away from my daughter, and I like to think that I think I just generally I feel uncertain about. Sometimes I just think I'm full of shit with myself. I tell myself I want to be a stay-at-home mom in moments that I feel like I'm too split, like my attention is all over the place, and I find that I get very short with people I love when I'm trying to work and trying to be present with them, and I have to compartmentalize because it's not fair to them, A, that my attention is split, but B, that I feel like I'm gonna lose my mind because I'm pivoting from one thing to the next instead of just being. Even on my vacation, I was kind of working and trying to negotiate this deal that all fell through the day after I got back from vacation. It was such a lesson in well, I could have just put that off until I was done with vacation. It didn't need to happen right away. This sense of kind of urgency
Yeah.
and a feeling of like pick me energy, like feeling this, like, honestly, my biggest defect of character that I'm trying to work on always is, and it's at the root of everything we're talking about, is feeling like a loser. Like I just have this loser energy or belief that I constantly have to wrestle with. And it's as a mother, as a wife, as a worker, it's just always there. And I think it leads to feeling desperate, which I think is never good. Some of that can express itself in financial insecurity. I think I used to be very much like you, like a commitment phobe. I just couldn't. I would rather be a commitment phobe than a flake. That was kind of my mantra. So I just never commit to anything, and it was pretty low risk. And now even voting for Trump and saying it was weirdly like a relief, because I actually took a stand and now I have to defend it somewhat. And I had always been like this kind of Gen X, like, oh, all you people who care, you know, like I could very easily like hide in that when it was more of just a fear of confrontation and commitment. Now I think I wrestle with general feelings of like and it's hindering, you know, it's like it undermines me
Well,
constantly. It's like this weird undertow.
yeah. I'm 80% sorry to hear that and 20% glad to hear it. Here's why. Hold on. I'm 80% sorry to hear that because I don't think of you as a loser at all. I think you're doing great stuff. And like we met back in 2019, and you were cool then, and you were doing cool stuff. But now I have a hard time defining you as anything other than a success in every
Thank
category.
you.
Your career's taken off. You're married. You've got a kid. You recovered from alcoholism, or in recovery, however you want to phrase that. You kicked that monkey off your back. These are all huge accomplishments in and of themselves. So I don't see any loser when I talk to you. Like, Bridget, it makes you feel better. I name drop you so that people don't think I'm a loser. So I think you're doing great. The bit that I'm glad a little bit of that is there is I do think that, as horrible as it is, some insecurity that we have kind of compels us to do great things. So I want you
Yeah.
to I just want you to have a little bit of that as a propulsive mechanism. But 80%, I'm sorry to hear that, because I think I speak for your audience in saying that we do not view you as a loser at all.
No, and I
And
know it's like my husband will say there's like a big disconnect between your reality and your feelings. And this could go back to like childhood stuff. Like even when I'm home, I see reasons for why I might believe this. So and being in recovery sometimes, but I think that that's if I'm being totally honest, that's something. And my therapist has said it could be like perimenopause, like hormonal. She was like, "Oh, I went through like a massively insecure phase when I hit your age, so there's that component that could be affecting why I have these they're just persistent, you know, it's under, and I have to just like be like, thank you for telling me you feel that way. And then it's like I don't want my daughter to pick that up. You know, it's very it's just where I'm at, just
have you
being
read?
totally honest.
I have to take off here in a second, so I'll recommend somebody
Yeah.
else's book other
But I
than
want to
my
know your
own.
biggest asset.
Oh, my biggest asset. Okay. Real quick, the have you read The Happiness Curve by Jonathan Roche?
I feel like I've heard of it. I don't know if I've read it.
It'd be worth looking into.
Okay.
Jonathan wrote a really good book called The Happiness Curve, and it appears that around age 40 to age 50, give or take 3 or 4 years for everybody just seems to slump into discontent for around a
I'm
decade.
happy though. That's a weird
Oh yeah.
thing. I
Well, okay.
feel I can look
Yeah.
around and I'm like, I marvel at
Yeah.
my life. So
Right.
I'm filled with gratitude, which I think
He
is my asset, but
well, he
it's like a persistent.
he would say, though, it's not depression, it's discontent. That like
Mhm.
it's and to get back to monkeys, in the book he talks about how zookeepers and for gorillas and chimps report that when their wards enter middle age for their species, that they just become kind of sad for a little bit, but then they come out of it. And the theory that he posits is that we kind of go through like a second puberty, where the first half of our lives we're accumulating opportunity, mates, resources. And then at some point, our body goes, okay, that part's done. Now you switch over. Now it's about the good of the group. It's about helping the community. It's about helping your kids. And that we seem to have this emotional transition period where we just kind of like, it just doesn't feel right for a while. But the good thing about it, the bad thing is apparently it just happens. The good thing about it is that it is a phenomenon that pretty much everybody goes through, that we can't think our way out of it the same way we can't think our way out of puberty, and that when we come up the other side, contentedness goes up. So like when we hit like 50 or so. So anyway, that's something like, because I'm feeling the same thing where I'm looking around my life going like, I've got a great life, and like, I don't know, I'm just kind of sad, and like I think maybe I'm beginning to go down that roller coaster. And I'm just like, okay, all right, it's 10 years. I can look at dog videos for 10 years to keep myself from sliding into depression, and then age 50 I'll come out and I'll be nice. So I'll wrap up here in a second because I do have to go, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Asset. I think either I'm going to say sense of humor, which I suppose is flattering, but I think that that's a very, very big part of my personality. And I think the people that I'm close to in my life would say I'm very loyal to them, and that I do become, I am very concerned with their well-being, and I will go out of my way to help them. I think that the people in my life would say that. So I hope that's one or the other. Either I'm a funny flim flam guy or loyal friend, one of the two. So
They're great.
Take it. Can I make a pitch before I take off?
I was going to ask you where we can find you and what we can, what pitch away.
Thank you. So the book that we talked about today is Tribalism Is Dumb: Where It Comes From, Why It Got So Bad, and What to Do About It. We spoke maybe about a third of it. Yeah, I'll hold up a copy too. We spoke about a third of it. So listeners, if you were beguiled by me and the conversation, there's more to the book. We didn't get to any of the stuff about how to deal with people that are obnoxious or how to avoid stupid fights. We didn't get into a lot of it. So I'll make a promise to you. If you buy the book, I think it's like $15 on Amazon. If you buy it, I promise you, politics will be a little bit less baffling to you for the rest of your life. It'll make a little bit more sense. I can't fix the system, but I can make you less baffled if you read the book. Now, if you have listeners that are really smart but illiterate and they don't want to read the book, you can come listen to me on The Political Orphanage, which is my podcast. So if you've fallen in love with my baritone dulcet voice and you want to get pithy commentary, come check me out on The Political Orphanage. And
It's
Bridget,
such a good
it was
podcast.
so fun to talk to you. So fun to hang out with you. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for coming. It's always a pleasure. I'm glad we got to catch up. Have fun in Scotland. Please let me know when you're back in my neck of the woods.
I will.
I'll see you soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
This has been Walk-Ins Welcome with Bridget Phetasy. I'm Bridget Phetasy, and you're welcome. It's the dumbest line.